Good evening, everybody. Thanks for coming. Welcome. I think most of you are familiar with Triac, so there's not a whole lot I need to say about Triac, but I'm really happy to present 3 people tonight, and I will talk about each of them as it's their turn to come up and do their thing. But anyway, my connection to this event, besides being connected to Triac via I'm a member, I'm a drummer, I teach creative writing here, I'm a supporter, is that I've got 2 so far, incredibly talented people who are going to be sharing their written words with us tonight. So, and I feel happy that I helped recruit them to come and do this. So, anyway, without further ado, let me introduce our first reader for the night. This would be Beth Fraysier. So I'm going to say a little bit about what she has to say about herself based on her bio, and then a word or two about what I have to say about that. She's like, oh my God, what's she going to say? Beth was born in Bluffton to Henrietta and David Fraysier. Beth was homeschooled, which makes her an interesting person that way, in her early education, but she has since earned a BA in history from IPFW, and right now she's working on a master's in liberal studies here. She's a Japanophile, is that how you would say it?
Yeah.
Japanophile, loves Japanese culture and history, and participates in anime crossplay. She's working on 3 creative writing works, a graphic novel and 2 regular novels.
Yeah.
Okay, right. And she wants to teach Japanese history. That's her goal. So, in terms of what I have to say about Beth, I thought about this for all 3 of our presenters today. I thought, well, what words come to mind when I think about these folks? I thought with Beth, it's a playful passion. That's what I thought about you, because you have such incredible enthusiasm for what you're interested in. And you put a lot of play in the best sense of the word. It is an engagement. You know, you just really put your whole self into it. And so it's a real joy to have you share your work, because you do put your whole self into it. So without further ado, welcome Beth Fraysier to Triac.
Hello everyone.
Hello.
I am going to be reading a short little story based on my experience of my creativity and community paper that will be going into my novel concerning one of my characters named Figaro. And a little backstory about Figaro is that she is a half Japanese, half American child who was forced to live here in Indiana because of circumstances with her mother's death, and her father could not take care of her. She has a band that has become her second family. One of the members is her cousin Mozart, who also lost his parents the same night that she did. And she goes by the name of Figaro, which is interesting because that is not her name, but she loves the Italian opera, the Barber of Seville, and so she has become Figaro. And they live in an opera house here in Fort Wayne, Indiana. So this is just a little snippet of their life and what goes on. I take a pull off of my Sapporo beer as I look over the syllabus that was given out today in class. A public project. What can I do with that? Set my beer down and stared at the paper, trying to think about what I could do. Maybe if I do something with the band, but I do that all the time. Maybe I look at the picture of my father sitting on my desk. The sakura surrounding him seemed out of place with the punk clothing that he was wearing when this picture was taken. I slowly reach out and pick up the picture. I give a half-cocked smile as I looked at it. You seem so happy at that time, Tosan. I'm distracting myself. I need to start thinking what I can do for this project. I tap my blue pen in irritation. as I try to come up with an idea. The only ideas that come to mind are lyrics for a song. I need to write them down before I forget. No, focus, Fig, focus. You need to figure out what you are doing for this class. Aren't we stressing a bit too early for this? The soft, silky voice of Mozart came from my doorway. You've already drunk 2 bottles of beer, and I see you are working on your 3rd one. Are we aiming to get drunk tonight, my dear cousin? He leans against the doorway of my bedroom. The soft, smooth, cocky smile placed on his face. I stared at him, frowning, trying to find words to say to him. It's only January, and what are you worried about anyway? He walks over to my desk and takes the sheet of paper out of my hands. Well, you could always hold a benefit concert for the Japanese Relief Fund. We already did that. Remember last year? Go ahead, take another pull for my beer. But he carefully takes it from my hand and takes a drink himself. He makes a face as the beer touches his tongue. Can't you drink something a bit more pleasing to the palate? I reach to take my beer back to nurse it a bit more. He moves it out of my way. Nah, it's the same beer that my Tosan drinks. He raises an eyebrow at me. So by default, you have to drink it? I lean back in my chair, pouting a bit. I like the taste of it. Besides, I don't make fun of you for enjoying your fruity drinks. They're more pleasing than this. He holds the bottle up. Whatever. If you are going to be a pain in the ass, just leave my room. Mozart stares at me for a few seconds. Then he proceeds to walk over to sit on my bed. As he does so, he turns my rolling chair around so I can see him. He sets my beer down on my windowsill and takes my hand. Figaro, he starts in the silky voice of his, you have months to figure out what you are going to do. Relax and enjoy the lull of the start of the semester. You are worrying too much already. I stare at him, trying to take in the calm voice and his rational words. Granted, be me. The rational words of my beloved cousin Mozart is irritating the shit out of me. Mozart, I say after a few seconds of silence in my attempt of an odd, quiet voice. Yes, Figaro? Are you practicing for the day you become a mom? Because you are really doing a great job treating me like a child. I pull my hands out of his, pick up the sheet of paper again. I hear Mozart give a huff. Well, if you don't want my advice, don't leave evidence that you are attempting to get drunk in the kitchen. Unlike some of us, I try to keep the place clean. I lean back in my chair and light a cigarette. Yeah, well, it helps me think. He sighs and shakes his head. Don't stay up too late, Figaro. He leans over and kisses my temple as he walks out my room, closing the door softly behind him. Even when we have a disagreement, he still worries about me. I mumble, shaking my head a bit. All right, now that distractions are out of the way, what is it that I can do for this project? I lean back and pull off my cigarette, looking around my room at the Japanese band posters I have, their eyes staring back at me as I think. You know, this could be a bit creepy when you are trying to concentrate. I look back at the picture of my dad, then glance at the little shrine that holds my mom's ashes. Maybe I could do something about Japan. Like a teaching of something of our culture, and my eyes go wide. I smile a bit. That's it, Fig. You have a wonderful idea. Go with it! Go with it! I write down quickly the idea that I have. I smile as the blue ink dries. And then I realize I ended up writing the idea down in Japanese. I read over the kanji and hiragana quickly and smile as I say the words out loud. Nihon no bunka. I reach to finish my beer and realize that Mozart had, in his exiting of my room, taken it with him. Figures, I say and mutter to myself as I go to gather my PJs and to take a shower before heading to bed. I woke up the next day by the familiar sounds of J-Rock coming from my alarm clock. As I stare at the clock and listen to the voice of Yomi from Nightmare, singing, I've taken the meaning of the song. I say one of the lyrics back in English. No matter how much you change, you're fine the way you are now. I slowly get out of bed, letting the music continue to flow as I get ready for my day ahead. I look at myself closely in the mirror as I brush out my hair. After getting dressed, the face that looks back at me is that of the double. Hardly show any signs of being Japanese. My mother's genetics ended up taking over my father's. With my coloring and facial features, my eyes are a bit different in their shape. That is, they are a bit smaller than that of what my mother's were. I let out a sigh and think, how am I supposed to talk about my culture, Japanese culture, when I don't even look Japanese? Way to go, Mom's genetics. Thanks for giving me the red hair and the blue eyes. I turn away from my mirror and start toward the kitchen to grab at least a muffin or something to eat before I leave for class. As I enter the kitchen area, I see the familiar sight of our spiky blonde-haired drummer attempting to make breakfast for all of us. His Chinese crested hairless little dude is standing at his feet, waiting for him to drop some food to the floor. I go over to the coffee pot and pour myself a cup, then look at him and raise an eyebrow. Are we getting a little stressed out about trying to cook pancakes again, Bach? I get an arrow-eyed look from him. Oi! Not my fault they ain't rising. I know they say that you have to wait for them to rise, but I have a class in like 2 hours. Put cream and sugar in my coffee and sit down. Then you shouldn't have made pancakes. I was trying to be nice, Fig. I give a tiny amused smile as I reach out for the newspaper lying on the counter to see what's going on in the world. So, Mozart told me last night you were trying to get drunk. Stressed already? I huff as I look at Bach. I wasn't trying to do anything except come up with my public project for one of my classes this semester. Oh, I also have to do a blog, but that's easy to do. I do a little dismissive wave to the blog part of the class. Seeing as I have a good idea about what I want to do with that, it shouldn't be that hard. So, did you come up with any ideas? Bach places a plate of what I suppose to be pancakes in front of me. I did come up with one, I say as I poke at the blob of pancakes on my plate. Well, what is it? Is it a band concert? Bach sits down with his own blob of pancakes and coffee and reaches for the strawberry jelly to put on his pancakes. Why is it that everyone assumes that is what I am going to do? I huff as I take a bite out of my food. That's because we kind of are a bando so fearlessly every chick dude. He gives a grin as he starts to eat his own food. Yeah, I am doing something that has nothing to do with the band at all. Well, what are you going to do, Fig? I'm going to try to find a place to teach about my Japanese culture. Bach looks at me, taking in my words, then I see his big grin. That's a great idea, Fig! I'm sure you can teach people about that. After all, well, you're half Japanese and you grew up in Japan. I look at Bach with a sad smile on my face. Yeah, I thought it was a good idea too. I look down at my coffee a little bit sadly. Bringing up the subject of me spending my early childhood in Japan is a sore spot. I didn't choose to leave Japan. That decision was made for me. I can't really complain. I could have decided to go to Tokyo for my college education, but I now have a life here. The choice was easy for me to make. I decided to stay in the United States with my band. Phil Bach placed his hand on my shoulder. Oi, didn't mean to make you sad, Fig. I look up at him. His blue eyes show concern as he looks back at me. I manage a small smile and give a dismissive wave. Nah, it's all right. I decided to change the subject. So, you have some of your business classes today, right? Bach gives a bit of a sigh. Yeah, I do, but... Demo? Old Doris is down. She ain't wanting to run in the cold weather. I don't know what to do. Maybe you should consider taking it to a junkyard, says Mozart as he comes into the room. He slowly slinks over toward the sink to fill a kettle up. Oi, old Doris ain't going nowhere but a mechanic, Bach says defensively. She's part of our family. Mozart turns around and leans back on the sink, crossing his arms. She is an old throwback from the time of the hippies and needs to be put into retirement. Just let her go, Bach. Mozart gives his all-knowing look at Bach. I can't just let her go, Mozart. There are a lot of memories in her. Mozart sighs as he puts the kettle of water on the stove. You sound like someone else who was having a hard time letting go of their old minivan. I feel Mozart's jade green cat-like eyes move over to me. I look up at him. Oi, oi, ne, watashi wa ruku no ga daisuki deshita ne. Mozart rolls his eyes. We all know you loved that van, Figaro. But don't you love your new car? I give a small childish pout and a nod of my head. See, Bach, Figaro has moved on to letting her new car pata. I'm sure you can find a new van that you can love the same as old Doris. Mozart goes to busy himself getting out a tea bag and sugar for his early morning tea. Bach huffs, looks over at me. He doesn't understand, does he, Vig? Shake my head. No, he doesn't. So, I take it you need a ride to class today. I say this as I finish up my pancakes. Yep. Do you mind if you take me? No, not at all. Just remember, I need to pick up Renji from the airport this evening. It must be horrible that he is getting in this late. Class has already started this week, Mozart says as he pours the hot water into his cup. I give a slight nod in my head. Hi, it is, but the flight he took yesterday was the only flight that he was able to get. I stand up and put my plates and coffee cup into the sink. Is his mom doing all right now? Bach asks me as he goes to put dog food in Lil Dude's bowl. Yeah, it was just a bad cold. She's doing better. I look over at Mozart. You're lucky. You don't have to take classes anymore. He sips his tea and looks at me. Lucky, you say. It was hard for me to find the job that I have with the Philharmonic. And even now, I'm not sure if it will be stable enough for me to keep. You always have that little dreaded cloud over your head, don't you, Mozart? Sometimes, Figaro, the glass is half full. I sit down at the table and he sits down at the table and looks at the blob of pancakes. He raises an eyebrow at Bach's direction. I give a slight nod of my head to answer his silent question. And he gives a silent sigh and shake of his head. So, have you figured out what you are doing for your project? He asked as he carefully selects a pancake that looks almost like a pancake. I smile and nod my head. Hi, I have. Mozart gives a warm smile. Well, what is it? I'm going to teach about Japanese culture to a group of kids that my creativity and community teacher does creative writing with almost every Sunday. Well, that does sound like a good idea. So, you're going to share the knowledge of your Japanese heritage with them. I give a wide smile and nod of my head. Do you know what you are going to talk about yet? Mozart asked as he put syrup on his pancakes. Well, I was thinking about talking about the history of Japan. Maybe do some origami, but I think that might take too long during the lesson, and I don't know how many lessons I'm going to have with them. But I'm going to definitely talk about the history and culture. I shift from one foot to the other, as I often do when I'm thinking about something or worrying that an idea won't be a good one. Mozart glances at me. He pulls his pack of cigarettes out of his pocket, then tosses them to me, followed by his lighter. I catch them and give a nod of thanks to him. Do you have your books here that have all the stuff in a more simplistic explanation than college level? He asked, as I light a cigarette. Take a drag thinking about it. My eyes go wide as I realize that they aren't here at the Opera House. I take that as a no. Let me guess, you left them at Bubby and Zaiti's place when the power went out? I nod my head. Mozart gives a bit of a sigh. Well then, you need to call Bubby and ask if she is coming up here on business. If so, she can drop them off to you. Bach comes back into the room with his book bag and my mailbag. Did I hear you talk about the rabbi dude and Miss Rose? I take my mailbag from Bach. Yes, I was. Why do you ask, Bach? Mozart asks as he takes another bite of his pancakes. Well, they called yesterday and asked if you wanted to go out to eat with them in town this Thursday night, and said that they really missed all of us. Bob puts on his black leather jacket and black ski cap as he talks. And you forgot to tell us? Mozart's voice rises slightly in aggravation. I left a note on the fridge! We share the same room, Bach. You could have told me last night. Oi, not my fault you didn't look at the fridge besides. You were caught up doing something for work and I didn't want to disturb you and I had homework. Mozart gives a slight irritated hug. Well, at least we know now, I say as I pull on my burgundy trench coat. I'll call Bubby in between classes to remind her to bring the books up for me. I put my Hide style of hat on my head. Very well, you do that, Figaro. Mozart stands up. Bach pulls him into a hug and kisses his cheek. I hear the soft murmurs that I've finished getting ready to leave. I hate to break up the love fest, but we live downtown. Bach, you have class in 2 hours. We kind of need to go parking. Parking on campus is a pain in the butt. Bach lets go of Mozart quickly. Right, coming oh so fearlessly, you chick dude. Bach grabs his book bag and follows me out to my car. The weeks following the first conversation and decision of what I was going to do went by quickly. Even the picking up of the 10-some-odd books for my grandmother seems like a blur. The decision on what day I would be teaching the class came down to the wire. And I realized on the first set day I was supposed to start teaching, my band had, in months of advance, booked a gig, and it was too late for us to cancel. This left me to worrying if I was even going to be able to teach the kids. I shouldn't call them kids, they are teenagers, about my culture and heritage. I was also a bit worried about how they would take the teaching of this class from someone who did not even look Japanese. I realized while doing this project of how self-conscious I really am about the way that I look. I think most people look at me and see me as some American who has an obsession with Japan. But it's my heritage, and I truly feel that how Americans are taught about Japan and the culture is a bit biased. The week before I had my lesson with these group of teenagers, I started to worry about how well my lessons would come across, and if I would end up slipping into Japanese while speaking to them. It was also the week that I had to present my PowerPoint to my creativity and community class of all I learned from doing the project, and to give them a taste of what I was going to be doing in the workshop. As I worked on my PowerPoint, my desk was full of books that I was using. I was starting to feel a bit overwhelmed by everything that was going on, worrying about how well my classmates would take the teachings, as well as the students. I stared at the PowerPoint and sighed. I lit a cigarette and took a pull off of it. This feels like utter word vomit and crap. I stared at the computer. Then I glanced up in the doorway. There stood our bass player and other resident Japanese, Renji. Gave a small smile at me. I don't think what you write is utter crap or word vomit. I blush as I hear him speak to me in his broken up English. I shift a little. You don't think so? I asked, still with a hint of red on my cheeks. He shook his head. Yep, whatever you write, I'm sure will be just fine, and they will understand. What are you going to do as interaction parts of the teaching? His chain that connects to his lip piercing swayed as he walked over to look at my PowerPoint. I'm going to show them how to tie a hakama and wear a kimono properly. He nodded his head. That sounds like a good idea. It is interactive and it shows part of our culture. He takes his hand and flips through the PowerPoint. Ne, it looks pretty good. Demo, I think you need to cut it down a bit more. It might be a bit over their heads if you do all of this, and are you sure you want to talk about Genbaku Bungaku? His brown eyes locked on mine, and my blue ones questions filling his. I nod my head. Hi. They're old enough to know about those kinds of novels, and what happened to Japan after the atomic bombs hit Hiroshima and Nagasaki. He pats my shoulder. Well, if you are sure about it, then it is your call. This is your teaching that you are going to be doing. Take in a deep breath and let it out. Yeah, I'm just a little concerned. That is all. He gives me an odd look. Are you scared? He asks me, his voice dripping with concern. A bit. Gives a small shake of his head. Figaro, you're the same girl who stage dove into a pit of crazy fans that you didn't even know, and you're scared of teaching teenagers? I laugh as I take a pull off my cigarette. I'd much rather face the fans than teach teenagers that might not understand me. Renji took the cigarette from my mouth and sat down in the ashtray. He pulled me into a hug and whispered into my ear, I have faith in you. I believe you can do it. He gently kissed my forehead and kept hold of me. I blushed as I held on to him and took in his kind words. I nodded my head and started to relax. That Sunday came quickly. It was a pretty decent day out, in the mid-70s, and I decided to wear casual clothing that I could move in easy enough, complete with sandals. As I drove in my car toward the place that I would be teaching at, I went over in my head what I was going to teach. I decided to do the off-script type of teaching, seeing as I wouldn't really be able to show the PowerPoint to the kids there on a big screen. But I did bring my laptop that held everything that I needed on it. As I drove, I kept on going over my head what all I was going to tell them. I would first start off with the history of Japan, and then go into the culture. During the culture part, I would show them how there are some connections between Japan and America. Finally, I would end with talking about the atomic bomb literature and how people need to realize what it was more about. I got there a bit early before my professor, who was leading the workshop. I sat in my car and played with my lighter. I was tempted to light a cigarette, but decided not to. I did not want to smell like clove cigarettes while teaching. I decided to put a piece of gum into my mouth and chew it for a couple of minutes before spitting it out and going in. I took the travel-on suitcase that had my hakama, kimono, tabi socks, and gaita out of my car, along with my laptop and my ex-Japan tote bag that had books that I was thinking about passing around for the class to look at. I took a deep breath and started into the building, listening as one of the students that I was going to teach was practicing drumming. I smiled a bit as the beat filled the air outside the building. This comforted me a little. I took a seat on the old couch inside of the old brick building and waited for my professor to arrive. I went over my head what all I was going to do, then nodded to myself a little in reassurance. I looked up at her as she walked in and gave a smile. She smiled back at me. You ready, Figaro? Nod my head. Yes, I am. As ready as I'm going to be for this. Well then, let's head up and let you get set up. I nodded my head as I followed her upstairs to start the class.
Thank you, Beth. I think I probably know that story is a little more autobiographical than anybody else does. And I think the idea that it's more terrifying to teach a group of teenagers than it is to get up and play with a rock band is completely true. So we're going to take just a quick, maybe 5-minute break so that people can kind of get settled in. We'll find out who the next person's going to be. I'll let you know when we come back. So take 5, coffee, tea.